Hi guys and welcome to my latest review. Now what we have here today is Wharfedale Diamond 220. And it's interesting about this model is that it has been on the market for some time now, around 4 to 5 years I think. And it started selling at a higher price than it currently is. I think it was around 350 or something like that. But nowadays you can get this one for around 200 bucks. And that of course means it's currently still selling, it's available, you can purchase it. Okay, so let me go quickly through some details that I find interesting with this model. First of all, it's the grills. As you can see, it has the grills, but they do not cover the whole front panel. Instead, they are separately for tweeter and mid-range bass unit. And I quite like this style because even when you use these, you still get the overall look of the speaker. You see these outer metal parts and how can I say, you still have that design language. It's a nice touch instead of just covering everything with a like generic square part and then you have nothing of the design left. And the rest of the build, I quite like it. The moment I took these out of the box, I actually felt they're weightier and heftier than I'd expect for this price range speakers to be. So for their small size, they have quite a nice feel of heftiness. And I like that. It just feels reassuring about the quality of the drivers and the dampening of the box and things like that. And the next thing to notice is that the bass unit is quite small. It's 5-inch driver, so it's a small speaker. And the bass reflex is firing downwards. So I don't know, can you see that? But this part is not the part of my stand. It's actually a part of the speaker. And the bass reflex is firing downwards and then it's coming out on all sides, radiating from this small space between the board and the speaker itself. Okay, and with that I'll stop talking about technicalities and features because you can read that basically anywhere on the web. What I want to focus more is on its sound quality, its strengths, weaknesses and things like that. So first thing that I need to mention is that I got these secondhand. So basically I don't know anything about their break-in period or if anything like that is needed because when I bought them they were already broken in. So right out of the box I was quite surprised by how rich their mid-range is sounding. Now that was the first thing that struck me. So I played some jazz vocals, something along the lines of like Nora Jones and Leonard Cohen or things like that. That's like pop jazz thing. And the vocals of these singers were really huge and lush and present in the mix. And that said, like that goes for all other instruments, you know, guitars, violins, piano, bass guitars, they all have that sort of presence and full bodiness that I really like. And then I started noticing other things, like soundstage width is really decent, and also is the height. So you have like this really huge image that goes left and right and up and down. Depth is decent, but it's nothing to write home about, but honestly no speaker at this price point will ever produce like insane depth of soundstage, at least in my experience. I haven't stumbled upon such speaker costing 200 bucks. And the next thing I wanted to mention is the bass line. Now, I find it quite decently deep and it's well controlled. It's slightly on the warmer side, but it's never too warm or too fuzzy, so it sounds like mumbling or it's covering details from upper regions also. No, it's never like that. It's basically just a very nice, well-balanced, slightly warmish bass line. That said, it's quite pleasant. It has decent amount of details, but in my experience, it doesn't go very deep. And of course, these are small speakers, but even for their size, the bass doesn't go really deep. Also, it's not that punchy. It doesn't have that kick and attack that some of you maybe would like to hear. Now, of course, placement is very important. If you move them closer to the walls or to the corners, the bass energy will increase. Simply the room, the acoustics of the room will help with that. But then you will lose a little bit of speed, resolution, and agility of the bass line. But if you give them a lot of free space, something that I'm doing basically, then you can expect decent bass line, not really deep, not really that punchy. And about it, I would say it's quite decent enough to give music genres like blues or jazz or pop rock decent weight and body, but it doesn't really have that exciting kick. It's probably not the best choice for electronic music. I don't see these firing excitement with their bass line, or let's say reggae music or something like that. If you really like to feel the kick and to feel the excitement, probably better look for something else. And as far as the higher regions go, they're again quite nice balanced with everything else in the spectrum. I don't feel there is excess of high frequencies, that they're like too sharp, too analytical, too bright. No, it's not like that. But there is neither the lack of high frequencies. Everything's just there. There's quite a lot of details, quite a lot of edges, transients, and it transitions very nicely from mid-range to high frequencies. That also goes for bass and mid-range. Like I mentioned, the bass is slightly warmish, and that goes for the mid-bass to lower mid-range too. It gives that like nice sense of rich and lush presentation to vocals and to many instruments, but it always feels like a whole, like sound is one whole. I never think actually about bass, mid-range, highs. I'm talking about that only because this is a review, but when I listen to them, I don't hear different ranges. They really sound like a well-balanced whole, and that's quite nice. Now, I did notice another thing that I was honestly wondering, should I mention it or maybe not? Because before these I was listening KEF LS50s, you can see them behind me, that are like 4 or 5 times the price of these. So I get my ear adjusted to their level of fidelity and smoothness, but I think it's worth mentioning. That upper region, probably from higher mid-range to highs, has some sort of mate feeling to it. Some slight feeling of sounding grainy and not really smooth, not really glossy or, like nicely echoey. That's something that you cannot see that from just looking at frequency response. That is great. As I mentioned, the balance is great between all the regions, but you still have that kind of feeling that it's a little bit grainy sounding in these upper regions. Now, don't get me wrong, that's not something that is very pronounced or very problematic at all. And I suppose that a lot of buyers that are just entering the hi-fi world will not even notice that, because as I mentioned, everything below that sounds very lush. They're lush vocals, lush mid-range, like huge sound stage. And that lushness and slight warmness of the bass and mid-bass is giving like very easy going type of signature, really nice and cozy listening experience. But if you have some mileage in audiophile world, if you listened to more expensive, better speakers, you might notice that slight graininess I'm talking about. I really can't hold that against them, because currently in my house I only have two other pair of speakers that I can compare them with. One is mentioned LS50 and the other one is Monitor Audio Bronze 2. And both of these are, Monitor Audio is almost twice the price of these. Not twice, but at least 50% or 70 maybe. And LS50 is like 4 or 5 times more expensive, and that's not basically a fair comparison. Okay, so let me try and sum up my feelings about Diamond 220. I think it's really a great budget speaker. I don't see it as a giant killer. I read some reviews that called it like best thing below, and then they set some really high price point or something like that. I don't feel that's true. I think it is great, but for what it is, and it is a budget affordable speaker. In my opinion, it has much more strengths than it has weaknesses. And just to quickly mention its strengths again, it's very well balanced. It has beautiful mid-range, informative mid-range. There's a lot of details. You listen to the vocals that are sounding both lush, rich, detail, and very intimate. And I love it. You have quite decent bass line. It's not really that deep, it's not really that punchy, but it's very decent. It works best in small rooms, and I suppose it's meant for those kind of environments. Don't put this one in like big room and expect any serious bass response. It'll just not happen. And about higher region, again, the sheer volume of it is very well balanced. Details are really nice. It's not too bright, it's not too dark, just really nice, a little bit grainy, and that's all. So everything else is basically your own personal feel about this. So who would I recommend this speaker to? Basically, I would recommend it to myself if I were buying $200 speakers, because it ticks all of the boxes I like and I appreciate in the like 95% of the music that I'm listening to. And I'm kinda old soul. I like a lot of blues and a lot of just calm tracks with acoustic instruments, with prominent vocals, something like that. These speakers do that really well. Now, what they don't do really well is electronic music that demands a lot of bass energy, a lot of bass kick, and a little bit of maybe feistiness, because they're just not tuned like that. For example, I don't know, some JBLs or Klipsch would do better job with that. I would not go for JBLs or Klipsch in this price range because they do not suit well my music and my preferences. They would have that excitement in bass region and maybe like a little bit zesty, attacky highs, but from experience, I know that they usually lack some fullness and richness that I really like in vocals and acoustic instruments in the music I listen to. And the last thing I actually wanted to mention is that these are not heavy load for amps. Now, it says 86 decibels per watt on the back, and that sounds maybe a little bit scary. For example, LS50s are 85 decibels. It's a very small difference on paper, but these are driven much easier than LS50s are. I tried it with few amps, even like really cheap, affordable Arylic digital amp, review coming soon by the way, And I basically never felt that they are a really heavy load. That said, they do scale quite nicely. These are capable speakers. These are really nice piece of hi-fi gear. And if you pair them with like a really low budget amp, you will get decent sound. If you pair them with something better, with more grunt, with more control, you will just get more details, more energetic sound, wider, more spacious sound stage. So really nice, decent speakers, and investing in a good gear to drive them from source to amp is a thing that I would recommend, because these diamonds would be able to use that for making even better sound. And that said, I feel that now I've given you all the information you need. Now, I really like them. I really like them for the price. They're great budget speakers. They're not giant killers. If you go up and up in price ranges, you get a little bit smoother sound, a little bit more soundstage depth. It's just, those are subtle things, but it is noticeable. So I think like some reviewers basically overhyped them. But it's not these speakers' fault, to be honest, because I really like them. And I said, for my own preferences, if I were after speakers at this price range, I wouldn't mind having these and listening to them. So that would be all for today, guys. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please click like and subscribe, and share this video with your friends so the channel can grow and bring even more interesting reviews. Also, visit my website for all these reviews with scores. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.